The rain wasn't gentle that evening. It came down hard, slapping the pavement like it had something to prove. Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and grumbling, as if the sky itself was warning people to stay inside, and most did. Cars crept along the wet streets with their headlights on. Windows rolled up tight. Porches sat empty. Front doors stayed locked. But on the edge of a quiet, tree-lined street in a neighborhood where houses cost more than most people made in 10 years, a small figure stood alone on a wide stone porch. She was just a child, 8 years old, maybe 9, with soaked brown hair plastered to her forehead and clothes clinging to her thin frame like a second skin. Her shoes were muddy, her socks dripping. She'd walked nearly 2 miles in the storm, her legs aching, her chest tight with fear she couldn't name but felt deep in her bones. She raised a trembling hand and knocked on the heavy wooden door, once, twice, then harder. Her knuckles white, inside the house was warm, lit by soft golden lamps and the glow of a large monitor in the study. A man sat at a sleek desk, fingers flying over a keyboard, eyes fixed on a spreadsheet filled with numbers that represented millions. He was used to silence, to control, to order. His name wasn't important, not yet, but people who knew him called him the kind of man who built empires before breakfast. He wore a crisp shirt, sleeves rolled up, a half-empty glass of water beside him. Outside didn't exist when he was working. Not really, but then the knock. He frowned. No one came to this house unannounced. Ever. His security system would have alerted him if a car pulled into the driveway. The cameras showed nothing unusual. Except now, on the front porch feed, there she was. A little girl. Alone. In the rain. He stared at the screen, unmoving for a long moment. Something about her posture, the way she hugged herself, the way her shoulders shook, made his chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt in years. He muted his call, stood slowly, and walked down the hall, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. He didn't open the door right away. He peered through the peephole first, cautious, trained by years of dealing with opportunists and reporters. But what he saw wasn't a trick or a trap. Just a child shivering, eyes wide with exhaustion, and something else, something raw and urgent. He unlocked the deadbolt, the chain, and finally pulled the door open just a few inches. The cold, wet air rushed in. Raindrops splashed onto the hardwood. The girl looked up at him, her breath coming fast. Her lips were blue from the cold. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask if he was home. She just blurted out the words that had been burning inside her since she'd left the apartment. "They hurt my mom. She's perishing." Her voice cracked on the last word like it was too big for her throat. She swayed slightly, as if her legs might give out. The man froze, not because of the words themselves, though they were alarming, but because of the way she said them. There was no drama in it, no exaggeration, just pure, unfiltered truth, spoken by someone too young to know how to soften it. He opened the door wider without thinking. "Come in," he said, his voice lower than he intended. She hesitated for just a second, maybe remembering warnings about strangers, then stumbled forward. He caught her elbow gently before she fell, guiding her into the warmth. She left wet footprints on the floor, but he didn't care. "Are you hurt?" he asked, kneeling to her level. She shook her head quickly, then just as quickly nodded. "Not me, Mom, she can't get up. I tried to help her, but she's so cold. And her eyes, they're open, but she won't talk." He stood, already pulling out his phone. "Where is she?" "Down the street. In the gray building. Apartment 3B. Her voice was small but clear. She'd memorized it. She'd practiced saying it in her head the whole walk over. He dialed 911, giving the address, describing the situation. Unconscious adult female. Possible assault. Child present. The operator stayed calm, asked questions, promised help was coming. While he talked, the girl stood there, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the floor. She didn't look around at the expensive furniture or the abstract art on the walls. She wasn't curious. She was focused on one thing only, her mother. When he hung up, he turned to her. "What's your name?" "Maya," she whispered. "Okay." "Maya, let's get you dry." He led her to the guest bathroom, handed her a thick towel, and found an old t-shirt and sweatpants from the laundry room. Clean, soft, too big for her, but better than wet clothes. She changed quickly, not shy, just efficient, like she'd done it 100 times before. He made her sit on the couch in the living room, wrapped her in a blanket and brought her a mug of warm milk. No sugar. Just how his own mother used to make it when he was sick. She held it with both hands, steam rising around her face. "Did someone hurt your mom?" he asked gently. She nodded, eyes filling with tears but not spilling over. He came back. After all this time, said he was sorry. Mom believed him. She always believes people when they say they'll change. Her voice was quiet, but there was anger underneath, sharp and old for someone so young. He waited till I was asleep. Then I heard yelling. I woke up and saw him hitting her. I screamed, and he looked at me like I was nothing. Then he left. Just walked out. She took a shaky breath. Mom fell down. She tried to get up, but she couldn't. I stayed with her all day. I gave her water. I covered her with blankets. But she kept getting colder, and she wouldn't wake up right. I knew I had to get help. "Why come here?" he asked, though a strange feeling was already stirring in his gut, a memory trying to surface. Maya looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time. "Because of the letter." "What letter?" "In Mom's drawer. The one with the flower on it. She keeps it under her socks. It's from you, from her brother." The words hit him like a punch. His sister, Elena. He hadn't seen her in over 15 years. Not since she'd walked out of his life after a fight so bitter it left scars neither of them knew how to heal. He'd been building his company then, obsessed with success, blind to everything else. She'd needed him, really needed him, when her relationship started falling apart. But he'd brushed her off, told her to handle it like an adult, said he didn't have time for drama. She'd vanished shortly after. Changed her number. Moved cities. Left no forwarding address. He'd tried to find her once years later through private investigators but came up empty. He assumed she didn't want to be found. And maybe she didn't, not by him, but now. This child, his niece, standing in his living room soaked and scared, because her mother was dying in a cheap apartment while he lived in a house with marble floors and a wine cellar. Guilt crashed over him so hard he had to sit down. You're Elena's daughter?" he asked, voice rough. Maya nodded. "She talks about you sometimes. When she thinks I'm asleep. She says you used to carry her on your shoulders when you were kids, that you protected her from the neighbor's dog." A lump formed in his throat. He remembered that dog. Big, loud, always barking. He'd stood between it and his little sister every single time. "She never told me about you," he said softly. "I think she was ashamed," Maya said, surprising him with her honesty. "She says we don't have nice things like other kids. That we're broken." She looked down at her hands. "But I told her we're not. We're just stuck." He reached out slowly and placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch. "You're not broken, Maya, and you're not stuck anymore." Just then, red and blue lights flashed through the window. Sirens wailed, then cut off. Voices outside, calm, professional. "They're here," he said, standing. "Let's go." He helped her into a dry jacket, his too big, sleeves covering her hands, and walked her to the door. Paramedics and 2 police officers stood on the porch, raincoats glistening. "This is Maya," he said. "Her mother is in apartment 3B, unconscious. Possible assault." The suspect fled. One paramedic knelt to Maya's level. "Hey there, sweetheart. You did really good getting help. Can you show us the way?" Maya nodded and stepped forward, but then turned back to the man. "Will you come too?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'm coming." They drove in the ambulance, Maya in the front seat with a paramedic, him in the back watching as they sped through the wet streets. Every siren, every turn felt like a countdown. At the apartment complex, police had already secured the area. The door to 3B was open. Inside, the place was small, just one room serving as kitchen, living room, and bedroom. A thin mattress on the floor. A hot plate on a folding table. Toys stacked neatly in a corner, and on the bed, pale and still, lay a woman. Elena. She looked older than he remembered. Thinner, her face marked by lines of worry and exhaustion. But it was her. No doubt a paramedic checked her vitals. Pulse is weak. Body temp low. Signs of blunt force trauma to the head and torso. "We need to move her now." As they lifted her onto a stretcher, Maya ran to her side, clutching her hand. Mom, it's me." "Help is here." Elena's eyelids fluttered, but she didn't wake. The man stood in the doorway, heart pounding. He wanted to say something, to apologize, to explain, to promise, but words felt useless now. All that mattered was getting her to the hospital. He turned to an officer. I'm her brother. I'll go with her. And this is my niece. She stays with me. The officer nodded, already taking notes. We'll need statements later. But for now, get her care. At the hospital, it was chaos and calm all at once. Beeping machines, hurried footsteps, hushed voices. Elena was rushed into the ER. Maya sat in the waiting room, wrapped in a fresh blanket, sipping juice from a paper cup. She didn't cry. She just watched the double doors, waiting. He sat beside her, not knowing what to say, so he just stayed quiet, present. After what felt like hours, a doctor came out. Family of Elena? He stood. I'm her brother. The doctor gave a tired but kind look. She's stable for now. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, multiple contusions. She's been through a lot. We've admitted her to the ICU. She'll need time and support. He nodded, throat tight. Can we see her? Just for a few minutes. She's sedated. They walked down the hall, Maya holding his hand without asking. In the ICU room, Elena lay connected to tubes and monitors, her breathing slow but steady. Maya climbed onto the chair beside the bed and gently touched her mother's arm. She's going to be okay, Maya whispered, more to herself than anyone. He stood at the foot of the bed, watching them. This woman, his sister, had raised a child alone in silence, carrying shame that wasn't hers to carry. And this little girl, she'd walked through a storm to save her. He thought about all the times he'd chosen work over people. All the birthdays missed, the calls not returned, the pride that kept him from reaching out. Now here they were. Not because of a grand gesture or a dramatic reunion, but because a child knocked on a door in the rain and said 3 words that changed everything. She's perishing. And for the first time in years, he felt something real. Not success, not power, but purpose. He pulled up a chair beside Maya and sat down. He didn't speak. He just stayed, because sometimes showing up is the only thing that matters. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of the heart monitor, a soft, rhythmic sound that felt both comforting and fragile, like a promise that could break at any moment. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky stayed gray, heavy with leftover clouds. Inside, the man sat in a stiff chair beside the bed, watching his sister breathe. She hadn't opened her eyes since they'd brought her in, but the doctors said that was normal. Her body needed rest. Healing wasn't fast. It never was. Maya sat on the other side of the bed, her small legs dangling above the floor, one hand resting lightly on her mother's arm. She hadn't let go since they arrived. Every few minutes she'd lean closer and whisper something. I'm here, or the nurse said you're getting better, or just I love you. Her voice was soft, steady, like she was holding the whole room together with those words. He watched her and felt a strange ache in his chest. Not pain, exactly, but something deeper. Regret, maybe, or longing. He'd spent years building a life where everything was controlled, measured, predictable. But this raw, messy human moment was nothing like that. And yet, it felt more real than anything he'd ever done. A nurse came in quietly, checked the IV line, adjusted a blanket, and gave Maya a small smile. She's doing better than we expected, she said gently. That's thanks to you, sweetheart. You got help fast. Maya nodded but didn't look up. I had to, the man finally spoke. How long has it been like this? With her not eating well? Getting hurt? Maya hesitated. She wasn't sure how much to say. But then she looked at him, really looked, and something in his eyes must have told her it was safe. A long time, she said. Not always like this, but hard, always hard. She told him how they moved a lot, 3 times in the last 2 years. Always at night, always with suitcases packed and lights off. How her mom worked at a diner in the mornings, cleaned offices at night, and sometimes took in sewing on weekends. How they ate a lot of rice and beans, and how her mom always gave her the bigger portion. How birthdays were quiet. Just a cupcake from the gas station, a handmade card, and a hug that lasted extra long. She never complained, Maya said. Not out loud, but I could tell. She'd cry in the bathroom with the water running so I wouldn't hear. He swallowed hard. Why didn't she reach out to me? Maya shrugged, but her eyes dropped. She said you were busy, important, that you wouldn't understand our life. And that she was scared? Scared of what? That you'd think she was a bad mom, or that you'd take me away because we didn't have a nice house or new clothes. She paused, then added quietly, She said you used to tell her she wasn't strong enough. The words hit him like ice water. He remembered that fight. It had been years ago, but the memory was sharp. She'd called him crying after her partner had shoved her during an argument. He'd been in the middle of a funding round, stressed, impatient. Instead of listening, he'd snapped, "You keep going back to him. If you were stronger, you'd leave." He'd meant it as tough love, but it had sounded like blame, and she'd never called again. Now, lying in this hospital bed, she looked anything but weak. She looked like someone who'd carried the weight of the world with no one to share it. Later that evening, a social worker came by, kind-faced, calm voice. She spoke with Maya first, asking gentle questions about what happened, if she felt safe, if she'd been hurt too. Maya answered honestly but without drama. She wasn't performing. She was just telling the truth. Then the woman turned to him. "You're the uncle?" "Yes. And you're willing to take her in temporarily?" "I'm not just willing," he said. "I'm her family. I should have been there long before now." The social worker nodded, making a note. "We'll need paperwork, of course. Background checks. But given the circumstances and the fact that the mother is hospitalized and the alleged abuser is being sought by police, we can place Maya with you on an emergency basis, as long as you agree to cooperate with child services and allow visits once her mother is stable." "I'll do whatever it takes," he said. Maya looked up at him then, her eyes wide. "You mean, I can stay with you?" He knelt beside her chair. "If you want to. My house is big. Too big, honestly, and it's been quiet for too long." She didn't smile, but something in her shoulders relaxed. "Okay." That night, he took her back to his house. The drive was silent, but not uncomfortable. Maya stared out the window, watching streetlights blur past. When they arrived, he showed her to a guest room. Soft bed, warm blankets, a window that looked out onto the garden. "There's a bathroom right across the hall," he said. "And if you need anything at all, you just knock on my door." "I'll be down the hall." She nodded, then hesitated. "Will you stay until I fall asleep? Just for tonight?" "Of course." He sat on the edge of the bed while she curled under the covers. She didn't ask for a story. She didn't need one. She just needed to know someone was there. Within minutes, her breathing slowed. She was asleep. He stayed a little longer, watching her chest rise and fall, marveling at how something so small could carry so much courage. The next morning, he woke early. He wasn't used to having anyone else in the house, so he moved quietly, making coffee, checking emails. But when he passed Maya's room, the door was open. She was already up, sitting on the floor with her back against the bed, folding the blanket neatly. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I like things tidy," she replied simply. They ate breakfast together. Toast, fruit, scrambled eggs. He didn't know what kids liked, so he offered choices. She picked everything, ate slowly, but finished her plate. After breakfast, he called the hospital. Elena was still unconscious, but her vitals were stronger. The doctor said she might wake up today. He turned to Maya. "Do you want to go see her?" "Yes, please." At the hospital, they found a police officer waiting outside Elena's room. He introduced himself as Detective Ruiz. "We found the suspect," he said quietly. "He was picked up last night trying to cross state lines. He's in custody. We'll be pressing multiple charges: assault, domestic violence, child endangerment." Maya's face didn't change, but her hands clenched into fists for just a second before she forced them open again. "Thank you," the man said. Detective Ruiz nodded. "Your sister's lucky, and so is Maya. That little girl saved her life." Inside the room, Elena still hadn't woken, but her color was better. Maya sat beside her again, holding her hand, talking about the toast they'd had, the birds outside the window, how the house had a big tree in the backyard, and then, just as the afternoon light slanted through the blinds, Elena's fingers twitched. Maya gasped. "Mom?" Slowly, Elena's eyelids fluttered open. Her eyes were cloudy at first, confused. Then they focused on Maya's face. "Baby," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks, but she smiled. "I'm here." "You're okay." Elena tried to sit up, but winced. The man stepped forward. "Don't move too fast. You're in the hospital. You're safe." Her eyes turned to him, and for a long moment she just stared. Shock, fear, shame, all flickered across her face. "You," she breathed. "I'm sorry," he said before she could say anything else. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there." She looked away, tears welling. I didn't want you to see me like this. Like what? Alive, fighting? Loving your daughter enough to survive? His voice was gentle but firm. You don't have to be perfect for me to care, Elena. You never did. She started to cry then, quiet, shuddering sobs. Maya climbed onto the bed carefully and wrapped her arms around her as best she could. He stepped back, giving them space, but stayed in the room. He wasn't going anywhere. Over the next few days, Elena grew stronger. She ate real meals. She sat up on her own. She talked, first just to Maya, then slowly to him. The past came out in pieces, like shards of glass being carefully gathered. She told him how, after their fight all those years ago, she'd felt too ashamed to reach out. How she'd believed she deserved the pain because she kept going back. How she'd hidden her pregnancy at first, terrified he'd judge her for bringing a child into that chaos. When Maya was born, she'd decided no more. She'd left in the middle of the night with nothing but a backpack and a bus ticket. But starting over with no money, no support, and a baby was nearly impossible. She'd worked until her hands bled, slept in shelters, lied about addresses to keep Maya in one school, and through it all she'd kept his old letter, the one he'd written after their grandmother died, saying no matter what, you'll always have me. She'd read it on her hardest nights but never sent a reply. She thought he'd forgotten her. I didn't, he said one afternoon sitting by her bed. I looked for you, for years. I just didn't know how to find you without making you feel pressured. She looked at him. Really looked, maybe for the first time since they were kids. You're different. So are you, he said. Stronger than I ever gave you credit for. Meanwhile, Maya settled into his house like she'd always belonged there. She didn't treat it like a palace or a museum. She made messes, spilled juice on the counter, left socks in the hallway, drew pictures with crayons at the kitchen table. And he didn't mind. In fact, he liked it. The house felt alive now. He learned her routines. How she liked her hair braided before bed. How she always checked under the bed for monsters, even though she claimed she didn't believe in them. How she hummed when she was nervous. He started doing things he hadn't done in decades, reading bedtime stories, making pancakes on Saturday mornings, walking her to the park. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies blink in the dusk, Maya asked, "Do you think Mom will come live with us?" He didn't give her a promise he couldn't keep. I don't know yet, but I know this, wherever she is, you'll be with her. And if she needs help, I'll be there too. No more running. No more hiding. Maya nodded, satisfied. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You're a good uncle. He didn't say anything. He just put his arm around her and watched the fireflies dance. Back at the hospital, Elena began physical therapy. She was weak but determined. Every step was slow, every movement careful, but she never complained. And every afternoon, Maya came with him to visit, bringing drawings, jokes, or just her quiet presence. One day, Elena asked to speak to him alone. When Maya went to get water from the cafeteria, Elena took a deep breath. I need to ask you something. Anything. If I can't take care of her right away when I get out, I don't want her in foster care. Not even for a day. She won't be, he said firmly. She's staying with me. As long as you need. Elena's eyes filled. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. He leaned forward. I missed her whole life so far. I'm not missing another minute. Elena reached out and squeezed his hand, the first time she'd touched him in 15 years. Thank you. That night, he sat at his desk, not working, just thinking. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo. Him and Elena as kids, grinning on a swing set, grass stains on their knees. He'd kept it all these years, tucked away where no one could see it. Now he framed it and placed it on the living room shelf, where Maya would see it every day, because family wasn't about perfect houses or spotless records. It was about showing up when it mattered, about saying I'm here when someone's perishing, and this time, he wouldn't wait for a knock on the door to remember that. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and weak coffee, but to Maya, it smelled like hope. Every morning for the past week, she'd walked in with a small backpack slung over one shoulder. Inside, a drawing, a wrapped cookie from breakfast, and a smooth stone she'd picked up in the garden. For luck, she'd say, placing it gently on the bedside table. Her mother would smile, weak but real, and tuck the stone into her palm like a secret. Elena was getting stronger, but healing wasn't a straight line. Some days she could sit up and talk for an hour. Other days she'd drift off mid-sentence, exhausted by the simple act of staying awake. The doctor said her body had been running on empty for years, malnourished, stressed, worn down by constant fear. Now that the danger was gone, her system was finally allowing itself to rest. But rest, they warned, could take weeks, maybe months. Still, she was alive, and that was everything. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the blinds in soft stripes across the floor, Elena asked Maya to step outside for a few minutes. "I need to talk to your uncle," she said, her voice quiet but steady. Maya hesitated, glancing between them. But she trusted them both now, enough to nod and slip out, closing the door softly behind her. When they were alone, Elena turned to her brother. "They're asking about custody," she said. He sat forward in his chair. "Child services?" She nodded. "They've been kind. But they have rules. They need to know where Maya will live once I'm discharged. They said I don't have stable housing, no income right now. And my medical records show long-term neglect, not by me but by the system. That worries them." He didn't flinch. "Then I'll file for temporary guardianship. Officially, legally, whatever they need." Elena looked down at her hands, twisting the hospital blanket between her fingers. "I'm not trying to give her up." "You know that, right?" "I know," he said gently. "But right now you need to heal. And she needs safety. That doesn't mean you're losing her. It means we're protecting her, together." Tears welled in Elena's eyes, but she blinked them back. "I spent so long thinking I had to do everything alone. That asking for help meant I failed." "You didn't fail," he said firmly. "You survived. That's not failure. That's courage." She let out a shaky breath. I want her to have a childhood, real ones, not just survival." "She will," he promised. "Starting now." Later that day, a woman from child services came by, calm, professional, with kind eyes and a clipboard. She spoke with Elena first, then with him, then with Maya in the hallway, sitting on a bench where the light was soft. "Maya," she said, "how do you feel staying at your uncle's house?" Maya didn't hesitate. "Safe. He makes pancakes on Sundays. And he checks under my bed for monsters, even though I told him I don't believe in them anymore." The woman smiled. "And your mom?" "I visit her every day. She's getting better." She smiles now. "That's good to hear." She paused. "Would you be okay staying with him while your mom finishes healing?" "Yes," Maya said simply. "As long as I can see her." "Of course," the woman said. "Family stays together when it's safe. And right now, this is the safest plan." Back in the room, Elena listened to the report with quiet relief. When the woman left, she reached for her brother's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not making me beg," he squeezed her hand. "You never have to." That evening, he took Maya home. The house felt different now, not just big and quiet, but full of purpose. He'd started leaving lights on in the hallways at night. He'd bought children's books, not knowing which ones she'd like. So he got a whole stack. Adventure stories, animal tales, even a book about stars. Maya picked one about a brave little fox and read it aloud at bedtime, her voice growing stronger with each page. After she fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad, writing down everything he needed to do. Contact a family lawyer, gather documents, set up a bedroom that felt like hers, not just a guest room. He also called his assistant, not for work, but to clear his schedule for the next 2 weeks. "Personal emergency," he said. "Family comes first." His assistant didn't argue. She'd worked with him long enough to know he didn't say things like that lightly. The next morning, he drove Maya to school for the first time. She'd been homeschooled off and on during their moves, but now, with stability in sight, enrolling her felt right. The school was small, warm, with teachers who greeted her by name after just one meeting. Maya held his hand tightly as they walked in, but once inside, she straightened her shoulders and followed the teacher without looking back. He watched her go, heart full. After dropping her off, he went to the hospital. Elena was sitting up in bed wearing real clothes for the first time. A soft sweater Maya had brought from home, jeans folded neatly on the chair. She looked tired but proud. "They said I might go home in a few days," she said. "Home?" he asked gently. She nodded toward him. "Your place. Just until I can stand on my own, if that's still okay." "It's more than okay," he said. "It's where you belong." She smiled, a real one this time, small but bright. Remember when we were kids and I broke my arm falling out of that oak tree? He laughed softly. You screamed so loud Mom thought a bear had gotten you. And you carried me all the way home on your back, she said. Even though I was crying and kicking. I didn't mind, he said. You were my sister. She looked at him, eyes glistening. I forgot what that felt like. You don't have to forget anymore. Later that week, Elena was discharged. Not fully healed, but stable enough to continue recovery at home. They brought her back to his house in a wheelchair. Not because she couldn't walk, but because the doctors insisted. Maya ran out to meet her, holding a handmade welcome home sign with glitter that shed everywhere. Inside, her old room had been transformed. Not fancy, just warm. Soft blankets, photos of her and Maya on the dresser, a window that opened to the garden, a small fridge stocked with juice and broth, a chair by the bed for late-night talks. Elena cried when she saw it, not sad tears, the kind that come when someone sees you and chooses you exactly as you are. The first few nights were hard. Elena had nightmares. She'd wake up gasping, convinced someone was in the house. Once, she bolted upright, shouting, "Maya!" only to find her daughter already at the door, wide awake, holding her stuffed rabbit. I'm here, Mom, Maya said, climbing into bed beside her. No one's here but us. Her uncle stood in the doorway, heart aching. He didn't intrude. He just turned on the hallway light a little brighter and went back to his room, listening until their breathing slowed again. During the day, he made sure Elena rested. He cooked simple meals, soup, toast, scrambled eggs. He ran her baths with Epsom salts, brought her tea without being asked. He didn't treat her like a victim. He treated her like family, someone worthy of care, not pity. Maya balanced it all with quiet grace. She did her schoolwork at the kitchen table, helped set the table for dinner, and every evening she'd sit with her mom and tell her about her day, about the girl who shared her crayons, the math problem she solved, the bird that landed on the windowsill. One afternoon, as Elena dozed on the couch, Maya whispered to her uncle, "Do you think she'll ever be happy again?" He thought for a moment. Happy isn't something that just happens. It's something you build, brick by brick, day by day. And now she's got the right tools and the right people. Maya nodded, satisfied. Then she added, I think she already is. A little. He smiled. Me too. A week after Elena came home, they sat together in the backyard as the sun dipped low. The garden wasn't fancy, just a few flower beds, a patch of grass, and that big oak tree Maya loved to climb, with permission and supervision. Elena sat in a lawn chair, wrapped in a blanket, sipping herbal tea. Maya lay on the grass nearby, tracing shapes in the clouds. Her uncle joined them, carrying 3 mugs of hot chocolate, extra marshmallows for Maya. For a long time, no one spoke. They just listened to the wind in the leaves, the distant chirp of crickets, the soft hum of the world settling into evening. Then Elena said, I never thanked you for opening the door that night. He looked at her. You don't have to. But I want to, she said. If you hadn't, I don't know if I'd be here. You would have fought, he said. You always do. Maybe, she admitted. But fighting alone is different than fighting with someone beside you. Maya rolled onto her side, propping her head on her hand. Now we're a team, she declared. Elena reached over and brushed a strand of hair from Maya's face. The best team. He watched them, the sister he'd lost, the niece he'd never known, and felt something shift inside him. For years, he'd measured success in numbers, revenue, growth, market share. But sitting here, in the quiet gold of sunset with the people who mattered most just breathing beside him, he realized what real success looked like. It wasn't in boardrooms. It was here. In this moment. In the way Maya yawned and snuggled closer to her mom. In the way Elena's hand found his and gave it a quick, grateful squeeze. Later that night, after Maya was asleep and Elena was resting, he sat at his desk again. But this time, he wasn't looking at spreadsheets. He opened a new document and began drafting plans for something else. A community center. Not flashy, just a safe place for women and kids who'd been through what Elena had. counseling, job help, childcare, a kitchen where no one went hungry. He didn't need to announce it. He didn't need credit. He just needed it to exist because someone had knocked on his door in the rain. And that knock had reminded him what really mattered. Now, he'd spend the rest of his life making sure others had someone to knock on too. The morning sun came in soft through the kitchen window, painting stripes of gold across the table where Maya sat with her homework spread out like a puzzle. She chewed the end of her pencil, brow furrowed, trying to solve a math problem that seemed determined to outsmart her. Across from her, Elena stirred a pot of oatmeal on the stove, moving slower than before but with more strength in her steps. Her color was better now, less pale, more alive, and the dark circles under her eyes had faded to faint shadows. He walked in, still in his robe, holding a steaming mug. "Any progress?" he asked, nodding at the worksheet. Maya sighed. "I think the numbers are laughing at me." He chuckled and sat beside her. "Let me see." He didn't take over. He just pointed to one line. "What if you try it this way?" She blinked, tried it, and her face lit up when the answer clicked. "Oh, that makes sense." Elena turned, smiling at the sight. Her daughter learning, her brother helping, the quiet rhythm of a normal morning. It still felt strange sometimes, this peace, like she'd woken up inside someone else's life. But it was real, and it was theirs. Later that day, a knock came at the front door. Not the desperate, rain-soaked kind from weeks ago, but firm, official. 2 officers stood on the porch, one holding a folder. He invited them in, heart steady. He knew this was coming. They sat in the living room, Maya watching from the hallway, Elena beside her with a protective hand on her shoulder. "The suspect has been formally charged," the lead officer said. "Assault causing bodily harm, domestic violence, child endangerment, and violating a prior restraining order we didn't know about until now." He paused. "Your sister filed 1 year ago but never followed up when he disappeared. He used that gap to track her down." Elena's face went still. "I thought he was gone for good." "He's not," the officer said gently. "But he won't be coming near you again. He's looking at serious time, and we've placed a permanent no-contact order. If he even gets close to this address, he's back in cuffs before he takes 2 steps. Maya didn't cry. She just nodded, like she'd been waiting for this final piece to fall into place. Safety wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a fact, written in law. After the officers left, Elena sat very still for a long time. Then she whispered, "I kept thinking it was my fault. That if I'd just been smarter, quieter, better, it wouldn't have happened." He looked at her, voice low but firm. "It was never your fault. Not once. Not ever." She took a shaky breath, then let it out slowly. For the first time, it seemed like she almost believed it. That afternoon he called a lawyer, not the kind who handled corporate mergers, but one who specialized in trauma-informed family law. They met at the house, over tea, while Maya played quietly in the garden. The lawyer listened carefully, then laid out the path forward. "With the criminal case moving ahead and your sister's medical record showing long-term abuse, the court will likely support your temporary guardianship. But if Elena wants full custody back, which she does, she'll need to show stability, housing, income, therapy compliance. Nothing extreme, just proof she's safe, supported, and healing. I'll provide whatever she needs," he said. The lawyer nodded. "Good. But it's not just about money. The court wants to see a support system, family, community. That's actually more powerful than a bank statement." Elena looked at her brother. "We have that now." "Yes," he said. "We do." Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new kind of rhythm. Elena started outpatient therapy twice a week. She didn't talk about it much, but sometimes, after a session, she'd sit on the porch with a cup of tea and stare at the sky like she was letting go of something heavy. Maya never asked what. She just brought her a blanket if it got chilly. He, meanwhile, began stepping back from the daily grind of his company. Not quitting, just redefining his role. He called a meeting with his leadership team and told them, plainly, I'm still involved, but I'm not running day to day anymore. I've got family who need me, and I miss too much already." No one argued. Some even looked relieved, as if they'd been waiting for him to remember there was more to life than profit margins. One evening after dinner, Maya asked, "Are you going back to your big office soon?" He wiped his hands on a napkin. "Not like before. I'll still work, but from home most days. And I'll be here for school plays, doctor appointments, pancake breakfasts." She grinned. "Good, because I signed you up for the father-daughter picnic at school." He raised an eyebrow. "Father-daughter?" She shrugged. "You're the closest thing I've got, and the form said parent or guardian, so you're it." He laughed, but his eyes got a little wet. "I'd be honored." The picnic came a week later, a sunny Saturday in the schoolyard with checkered blankets, paper plates, and kids running everywhere with juice-stained shirts. He showed up in jeans and a t-shirt carrying a basket Maya had helped pack, sandwiches, apple slices, and homemade cookies that were slightly burnt but proudly made. Other parents nodded hello. Some recognized him, not from news headlines, but from the quiet way he'd started showing up at school events, always listening, never boasting. He played tug-of-war with a group of second graders, lost on purpose, and let Maya braid a dandelion chain into his hair. Afterward, as they walked home, Maya held his hand and said, "You're pretty good at this whole uncle thing." "I'm learning," he said. "You're doing great." Back at the house, Elena was waiting on the porch, wrapped in a light sweater. She'd started walking more, short trips to the mailbox, then around the block. Today, she'd even watered the flowers. "How was it?" she asked. "Loud," he said, smiling. "Messy, perfect." Maya ran inside to show her mom the friendship bracelet she'd made, and he sat beside Elena on the steps. "She's happy," Elena said softly. "Really happy. Not the kind of happy she faked for me when things were bad. This is real. She's safe," he said. "That's the start of everything." Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I've been thinking." "About work," he turned to her. "Yeah? I can't go back to cleaning offices or waiting tables. Not with my back the way it is. But I used to sew really well. Made all of Maya's clothes when she was little. Fixed neighbors' curtains, mended suits. I was good at it." He saw where this was going. "You want to start something?" "Not big," she said quickly. "Just a small business. Alterations, custom pieces. Maybe teach a class someday. But I'd need a machine, a space, a little help getting started." "You'll have it," he said without hesitation. "Whatever you need." She looked at him surprised. "Just like that?" "Just like that," he said. "You've got skills. You've got heart. And now you've got backup." The next week, they turned the empty sunroom into a sewing studio. He bought a professional-grade machine, shelves for fabric, a cutting table. Elena's eyes lit up the first time she walked in. She ran her fingers over the smooth wood, the spools of thread, the quiet promise of creation. Her first project? New curtains for Maya's room, soft blue with tiny stars stitched along the hem. Maya helped pick the fabric, and when they hung them up, she stood back and whispered, "It's like sleeping under the sky." Word got around the neighborhood. A woman down the street brought in a wedding dress that needed adjusting. Then another asked for school uniforms to be hemmed. Elena worked slowly at first, pacing herself, but her hands remembered what her body was still healing from. He watched her one afternoon, bent over the machine, sunlight catching the silver in her hair, and realized something. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building one evening. A local journalist reached out. Not for a scandal, but because someone had mentioned his quiet involvement with domestic violence support groups. He agreed to talk, but only off the record at first. They met at a coffee shop far from his neighborhood. The reporter was young, earnest, with notes scribbled in a worn notebook. "Why now?" she asked. "You've never spoken about this before." He stirred his coffee, thinking, "Because I spent years thinking success was something you earned alone. But real strength? It's asking for help. It's showing up for people when they're broken. I failed my sister once. I won't fail anyone else like that again." He didn't give a grand speech. He didn't announce a $1 million donation. He just shared the truth, how hard it is to escape abuse when you have no safety net, how shame keeps people silent, how one knock on the right door can change everything. The article ran a week later, small section, local paper, no photos. Just a quiet story titled "When the Door Opens." It ended with a line that made Elena cry when she read it. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is knock, and the kindest thing another can do is answer. A few days after that, a woman called the house. Her voice shook as she spoke. "I read your story. I'm in a bad place. My daughter's scared. I don't know where to go." He didn't offer money. He gave her the number of a shelter, the name of a lawyer, and said, "If you need someone to sit with you while you make the call, I'll be there." He meant it because healing wasn't just for his family. It was for anyone brave enough to reach out, and this time he'd be ready to answer. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and warm bread. It was one of those perfect late spring mornings where everything feels possible, the kind that makes you want to open all the windows and let the world in. Inside the house, laughter floated from the kitchen. Maya was standing on a step stool, flour dusting her nose, carefully stirring batter for banana muffins while her mother leaned against the counter, sipping tea and offering quiet tips. "A little more cinnamon," she'd say, "or don't overmix or they'll be tough." He watched them from the doorway, arms crossed, heart full in a way he still wasn't used to. 6 months ago, this scene would have been impossible. Back then, his days were measured in meetings, his nights in silence. Now his calendar had Maya's soccer practice and Elena's therapy check-in, scribbled in bold letters. And he wouldn't trade it for anything. Elena had come a long way. Her sewing business, small but steady, now had a waiting list. She'd even started teaching a weekly class at the local community center, showing women how to mend clothes, make simple dresses, turn old fabric into something new. She called it Stitch by Stitch, and the name fit. Not flashy, just healing, one thread at a time. Maya, meanwhile, had grown taller, bolder. She made friends easily now, joined the school choir, and kept a journal filled with stories about brave girls who saved their families. She still checked under the bed sometimes, not because she was scared, but because it made her feel strong to say all clear. And him? He'd stepped down as CEO, not retired, just shifted. He stayed on the board, advised on big decisions, but handed daily operations to someone who loved the grind as much as he once did. His new job title, as Maya put it, was Chief Pancake Maker and Homework Helper. He didn't mind. Today, though, was different. Today was the opening day of the new community space, the one he'd quietly funded, the one Elena had helped design. They'd named it The Haven, not after anyone famous, but because that's what it was meant to be, a safe place to land. It sat on a quiet corner of town, in a building that used to be an old library. They'd kept the tall windows, the wooden floors, the sense of calm. Inside there was a counseling room with soft chairs, a play area filled with books and toys, a kitchen where hot meals were served twice a week, and a workshop space where Elena held her classes. There was even a small garden out back, Maya's idea, where kids could plant flowers or vegetables and watch them grow. Now, as the clock neared 10, people began to arrive. Not crowds, but a steady stream. Women with tired eyes but hopeful steps, children holding hands with volunteers, neighbors bringing trays of cookies and handwritten notes. No cameras, no speeches planned, just people showing up for each other. Maya ran ahead, adjusting the sign she'd painted, "Welcome to the Haven, you belong here." She'd added tiny stars around the edges, just like the ones on her bedroom curtains. Elena stood beside him, dressed in a simple dress she'd made herself. Soft green fabric, clean lines, strength in every seam. She didn't say much, but her hand found his and she gave it a gentle squeeze. "You did this," he said quietly. "No," she replied. "We did." Inside, the space hummed with quiet energy. A woman sat with a counselor, tears streaming but her shoulders relaxed for the first time in years. 2 little girls colored at a table, giggling over a shared crayon. In the kitchen, volunteers filled thermoses with soup for a delivery route to elders who couldn't leave their homes. He walked through it all, not as a donor or a CEO, but as someone who finally understood what mattered. He stopped to help a boy reach a book on a high shelf. He poured coffee for a tired-looking woman who whispered, "Thank you for this place." He didn't say, "You're welcome." He just nodded and said, "Stay as long as you need." Later, as the morning settled into afternoon, they gathered in the garden for a small moment, just the 3 of them. Maya sat cross-legged on the grass, showing her mom how to braid clover stems. He leaned against the old oak tree, watching them. "Remember when I knocked on your door? Maya asked suddenly, not looking up. He smiled. I remember. I was so scared you'd say no. I was scared too, he admitted. Scared I didn't know how to help. Scared I'd mess it up. You didn't, Elena said softly. You showed up. That's all we needed. Maya finished her braid and held it up, a lopsided crown of green. She placed it gently on her mother's head. Queen of the Haven, she declared. Elena laughed, a real light sound that hadn't existed a year ago. Only if you're the princess, and you, Maya said, turning to him, are the royal pancake chef. He bowed dramatically, making them both laugh. In that moment, under the wide blue sky, with the scent of earth and blossoms around them, everything felt whole. Not perfect, life wasn't about perfection, but healed, mended, loved. Later that week, he got a call from the school. Maya had been asked to read at the end-of-year assembly. She chose a piece she'd written herself. He sat in the back of the auditorium, heart pounding like a proud parent, which, in every way that counted, he was. When her name was called, she walked to the mic, small but steady. She didn't look nervous. She looked sure. This is for my mom, she began, and for my uncle, and for everyone who's ever felt alone. She read about a little girl who walked through the rain because she loved someone more than she feared the storm. About a man who opened his door and found his heart waiting on the other side. About how broken things can be fixed, not all at once, but with patience, with care, with people who refuse to look away. When she finished, the room was silent for just a beat, then erupted in applause. Afterward, Elena hugged her tight, tears in her eyes. You told our story, she whispered. No, Maya said. I told the truth. That night they had dinner on the back porch, grilled vegetables, fresh bread, lemonade in mason jars. Fireflies blinked in the dusk and the air was warm but not heavy. Maya leaned her head on her uncle's shoulder. Do you think other kids will knock on doors now? I hope so, he said. And I hope someone answers. Elena looked at him, her eyes soft. You changed everything. No, he said. You did. You walked through hell and still loved your daughter enough to send her into the storm. That's the real courage. She reached across the table and took his hand. Maya covered both of theirs with her own. No one spoke for a while. They didn't need to. The next morning he woke early as usual, but instead of checking emails, he walked to the garden. Maya was already there, watering the new seedlings they'd planted, sunflowers, lavender, and marigolds. Morning, she said, not looking up. Morning. He knelt beside her. What are you thinking about? She shrugged. Just how things grow, even after winter. Even after storms, he smiled. Yeah, they do. Later, as he made coffee, he glanced at the framed photo on the shelf, the one of him and Elena as kids on the swing set. It no longer felt like a memory of loss. It felt like a promise kept. He wasn't the same man who'd answered the door that rainy night. He was softer now, kinder, more present. And though he'd built empires before, he'd never built anything as meaningful as this. A home, a family, a place where love wasn't earned. It was given freely every single day. That afternoon, a woman came to the Haven. She stood at the gate, hesitant, clutching a small bag. Maya saw her first and walked over, not with pity, but with quiet confidence. Hi, she said. I'm Maya. Do you need help? The woman nodded, eyes wet. I don't know where else to go. Maya took her hand. You're safe here. Inside, Elena looked up from her sewing machine, saw the woman, and stood without a word. She brought her tea, sat with her, listened. He watched from the doorway just as he had months ago in a hospital room, only now he wasn't frozen in guilt. He was steady in purpose, because he'd learned the most important truth of all. Wealth isn't in bank accounts or headlines. It's in the courage to open your door, in the choice to stay, in the quiet daily act of showing up for someone who's perishing and reminding them they're not alone. And as the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the Haven, over his sister, his niece, and the woman finding hope for the first time in years, he knew one thing for sure. This was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The morning started like any other. Soft light through the curtains, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen, the distant sound of birds arguing over a worm in the garden. But today felt different. Not because anything big was happening, but because everything small had finally settled into place. Maya sat at the table, sketching in a new notebook she'd gotten for her birthday. A real artist pad. Thick paper. The kind that didn't tear when you pressed too hard. She was drawing the oak tree in the backyard, the one with the low branch perfect for climbing. She'd added a swing hanging from it now, something she and her uncle had built together last weekend. For future kids, she'd said. He hadn't asked what she meant. He already knew. Elena moved quietly around the kitchen, humming as she sliced fruit for breakfast. Her hands were steady now, no longer trembling from exhaustion or fear. She wore a dress she'd made from leftover blue fabric, simple, comfortable, with pockets deep enough to hold a spool of thread or a smooth stone for luck. She'd started doing that again, collecting little things that felt like hope. A feather, a seashell from a trip to the coast, a button from Maya's first school uniform. He watched them both from the doorway, mug in hand, and felt that quiet fullness in his chest, the kind that doesn't need words. 6 months ago, he would have been on a call by now, checking stock prices, planning his next move. Today, his biggest decision was whether to plant tomatoes or peppers in the new garden bed. After breakfast, Maya packed her backpack for school. She wasn't little anymore, not in the way people meant when they said just a kid. She carried herself with a calm kind of strength, the kind that comes from knowing you're safe. She double-checked her homework, tucked a granola bar in her pocket just in case, and gave her mom a quick hug before heading out. "I'll walk you," he said. She rolled her eyes playfully. "I'm 10 now. I can walk alone, I know," he said. "But I like the walk," she grinned. "Okay, but no holding my hand in front of the school gate." "Deal." They walked in comfortable silence past houses with blooming hydrangeas and kids riding bikes with training wheels. At the school gate, she turned. "Thanks for the walk." "Anytime." She hesitated, then added, "Tell Mom I love her." "I will." Back at the house, Elena was already in the sunroom-turned-studio, threading her sewing machine. A stack of fabric waited on the table, soft cotton, sturdy denim, a few pieces of silk someone had donated to the Haven. She'd started taking custom orders again, not just repairs. A wedding dress for a young woman who'd escaped an arranged marriage. School uniforms for kids whose families couldn't afford them. Even a quilt made from old t-shirts for a grandmother who'd lost her home in a fire. He leaned in the doorway. "Need help cutting?" She smiled without looking up. "Only if you promise not to make the pieces crooked again." "I've improved," he said, stepping inside. "You cut the last one like a lightning bolt." "That was artistic," she laughed, and the sound filled the room like sunlight. Later that afternoon, he drove to the Haven. It wasn't his place, not really. It belonged to everyone who walked through its doors. But he still checked in, not as a benefactor, but as a neighbor. Inside, the space buzzed with quiet life. A counselor sat with a young woman speaking in low tones. In the play corner, 2 toddlers stacked blocks while their mothers shared coffee and stories. In the kitchen, volunteers packed meals for delivery. And in the workshop, Elena taught a class. 6 women, all ages, all stories, all learning to turn scraps into something whole. He didn't interrupt. He just filled the coffee pot, wiped down a table, and sat near the window with a book he wasn't really reading. He liked being there, not to fix anything, just to be part of it. Around 4, Maya came in with her school bag slung over one shoulder. She'd started volunteering after school, helping with the kids' reading hour, organizing the bookshelf, sometimes just sitting with someone who looked lonely. "Hi," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "Mrs. Lynn said you were here." "Guilty," he said, closing his book. She plopped into the chair beside him. "How was your day?" "Good, yours?" "Okay, we learned about ecosystems. Did you know earthworms help plants grow?" "I did not. They're tiny gardeners," he smiled. "Important work." She looked around the room, her gaze soft. "It feels like home here too, you know," he nodded. "That's the point." As the weeks passed, life kept unfolding in small, meaningful ways. Elena's business grew, not fast but steady. She hired a part-time assistant, a woman who'd come to the Haven months ago with 2 toddlers and nowhere to go. Now she could sew a straight seam and laugh without flinching. Maya joined the school newspaper. Her first article was about the Haven, not as a charity but as a community. "It's not about saving people," she wrote. "It's about standing with them." Her teacher read it aloud to the class. No one clapped. They just got quiet. like they understood something deeper. He, meanwhile, had started mentoring young entrepreneurs, not the flashy tech types, but people with small dreams, a bakery, a bike repair shop, a tutoring service. He didn't give them money, he gave them time, advice, a listening ear. One evening as they ate dinner on the porch, Elena said, "I got a letter today." He looked up. "From who?" "From the woman who came here last month." "The one with the baby," Maya leaned forward.
Is she okay?
"She's renting a small apartment now. Got a job at the library," she said. She said this place gave her the courage to believe she deserved better. No one spoke for a moment. The fireflies blinked in the dusk, steady and sure. Then Maya said, "We should plant more flowers." "For the bees," he laughed, always thinking ahead. "I like things that grow," she said simply, and that was the heart of it, wasn't it? Not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, just planting seeds of kindness, of safety, of belief, and trusting they'd take root. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. A man showed up at the Haven, not angry, not demanding, just there. He stood at the gate, hat in hand, shoulders slumped. Maya saw him first. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She walked over slowly. "Can I help you?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes red-rimmed. I read about this place. In the paper." She waited. "I hurt someone," he said, voice breaking. "Someone I loved. I didn't think I could stop. But I want to. I need help." She didn't say anything right away. Then she turned and called, "Uncle?" He came out, calm, no judgment in his stance. He'd learned that healing wasn't just for victims. Sometimes even those who caused pain needed a path back to humanity, if they were willing to walk it. He nodded to the man. "Come inside. We have a counselor who works with people like you. No shame, just honesty." The man nodded, tears falling. "Thank you." Later, Maya asked, "Was that okay?" "Letting him in?" "He asked for help," he said. "That's brave. And everyone deserves a chance to change if they mean it." She thought about that. "Even people who do bad things?" "Especially them," he said. "Because if they can change, fewer people get hurt." She nodded, satisfied. Time kept moving. Seasons turned. Leaves fell, snow came and went, and then spring returned with its usual stubborn hope. On the 1-year anniversary of that rainy night, they didn't plan anything special. No party, no speeches, just the three of them eating pancakes on the back porch, the same as always. But Maya brought out a small box wrapped in newspaper. "For you," she said, handing it to her uncle. Inside was a smooth stone, gray with a white streak running through it. On it she'd painted 2 words in careful letters. "Thank you." He turned it over in his hand. "Where'd you find this?" "Under the oak tree, right where I stood the first time I knocked." He looked at her, throat tight. "I'm the one who should be thanking you." She shrugged. "We saved each other." Elena reached across the table and took both their hands. No words needed. Later that day, he walked to the front door, the same one she'd knocked on all those months ago. He ran his hand over the wood, remembering the sound of her small, desperate voice. "They hurt my mom. She's perishing." He'd opened it out of shock then. Now he kept it open on purpose because he'd learned that the world isn't changed by grand heroes. It's changed by ordinary people who choose again and again to care, to listen, to stay. And as he stood there, sunlight warm on his face, he knew one thing for certain. The door would always be open, not just for Maya, but for anyone brave enough to knock.